Hello all, welcome to Gargi classes. Here I Komal Sharma heading towards our next literary term. In my previous early two videos, I have discussed all about two basic literary terms which are abject and abridgment. Now this particular literary term absurd comes upon number third all according to alphabetical order. Alright then, so here I begin with this particular literary term, the absurd, which has been used by various writers of English literature. So, absurdity is an avant garde style in which structure, plot, characterizations are disregarded or garbled in order to stress the lack of logic in nature and man's isolation in universe which has no meaning or value. So absurd there is an avant-garde, an experimental, a new modern experimental term which is basically written in style or in structure, plot, and characterization, in which these three are disregarded or garbled in order to stress the lack of logic in nature and man's isolation in universe which has no meaning or value. So this is an experiment, new modern experimental style, of course, in which the three things, structure, plot, and characterization of a particular play, are represented as there is nothing in man's life, and there are the representation of man's isolation into this whole universe. So hope you understand absurd meaning there is nothingness, there is nothing meaningful into the life or nature or universe of a human being basically. So this is being represented in various plays of modern era to which this particular term absurd has been given. All right then. Next, we are moving ahead towards the detailed description of this particular term, the absurdity. The term is derived from Latin absurdus. So this term, absurd, is basically derived from the Latin word absurdus, which formed from ab and surdus. So this particular Latin word is actually makes a form from A, B, and surdus, which means deaf and stupid. So the basic meaning of this particular term, absurdus, which is a Latin form of absurd, which means deaf and stupid. Deaf and stupid. So Albert Camus used the word in discussing his concept of existentialism, the philosophy that the individual is responsible for whatever decisions he makes according to the doctrine of free will, but that he makes those decisions without knowing what is right or wrong, as demonstrated in his novel The Stranger. So, here what happened is Albert Camus, one of the writers of modern era, he used the word they use this particular word absurd in discussing his concept of existentialism. Existentialism is an another literary term. While we will be going upon the E alphabet, then we will definitely discuss about this particular term too in detail. So, the philosophy that the individual is responsible for whatever decisions he makes according to the doctrine of free will. So, as we all are, as we all have the right to decide whatever we want, all according to our free will. So here he said that the philosophy that the individual is responsible for whatever decisions he makes according to the doctrine of free will. So, an individual himself or herself is responsible for whatever decisions he makes by his free will, but that he takes those decisions without knowing what is right or what is wrong. But into such kind of philosophy, the person takes decision by his free will without knowing the pros and cons or the right or wrong of that particular decision. So this was particularly demonstrated in his novel The Stranger, which is written by Albert Camus. In this novel, the protagonist Marshall commits a murder without seeming to realize either the seriousness or the consequences of such an act. There was neither an evaluation of the act before it was committed nor remorse for having done wrong after the fact. Living this way was considered absurd or senseless, illogical, and contrary to common sense. So, into this particular novel, the protagonist commits a murder without even getting into the depth of the seriousness or the consequences of such an act. And there was neither an evaluation of the act before it was committed nor remorse for having done it. Neither he was in evaluation before committing such an act, and nor he was in repentance or remorse after having done that particular murder. So he doesn't have any kind of common sense of doing such an heinous act. So basically, living this way is considered to be absurd, senseless, illogical, and contrary to common sense. All right. So this particular term, the absurd, is he demonstrated this particular word, the absurd, from his philosophy, existentialism, into his particular work, The Stranger, which is written by Albert Camus. So the way of living a life in which there is no logic, there is no common sense, there is no senses at all. Everything is just meaningless, is what we call the absurd. The life of deaf and dumb. All right. So next is a Franz Kafka, whose one of the work Metamorphosis. Franz Kafka is a short story writer. So Franz Kafka's work is Metamorphosis. This is a short story. This short story is an example of an absurd short story in which a man wakes one day having been mysteriously transformed into an insect. So, in Metamorphosis, there is a protagonist who transforms suddenly into an insect while he wakes up next early in the morning. He finds himself transforming into an insect. So the term is usually indicate the theater of absurd. So this is the theater of absurd. This term absurdity is an indication to the theater of absurd, a phrase which was invented by Martin Aslin in 1961 to refer to the plays of 1950s dramatists of Eugene Nasco, Edward Albee, Jean Zanet, Harold Pinter, and Samuel Beckett. So basically, it was Martin Aslin who invented this term theater of absurd in 1961 to refer to the plays of 1950s dramatists who were Eugene Ionesco, Edward Albee, Jean Zanet, Harold Pinter, and Samuel Beckett. Samuel Beckett is one of the very famous play or drama, Waiting for Godot, about whom you must have heard. This is an example of theater of absurd, where the two protagonists of the drama live their life as there's nothing into their life, and they repetitively speaks out one statement, that is, nothing to be done, nothing to be done. So the nothingness into this particular drama, waiting for Godot, which was written by Samuel Beckett, indicates how the man's life in today's era is completely absurd. All right. So this is all about our term absurdity, an English literary term which has been using by various novelists and dramatists too. The particular term derived from Latin word absurdus, which means surdus. The particular word surdus means deaf and dumb. All right, and of course this particular term absurd the uh, came from Martin Aslin's words. He invented this particular term in 1961 to dedicate the 1950s dramatists who wrote their dramas into such genre. All right then, so thank you so much for watching this video. Do subscribe our channel, do like the video if you think the information all about this particular term is enough, and if you have any kind of query and question, you can directly email us upon our email id, which is gargiclasses.edu@gmail.com, and I'll definitely make you answer by this Sunday only. And of course, press the bell icon to get the notification of our further coming videos. Thank you.